Hey guys, Speedoz here, and today I bring you a new video about a Bow Gladiator. Many people play this kind of build but using champion on hardcore, but I decided to give it a go with some more damage, so I choose Gladiator. Gladiator has a bunch of a quality of life when speaking of bleeding, because as soon as you kill the bleeding enemies, they explode, dealing 10% of their life as physical damage to the surrounded enemies, which helps you a lot with the clear speed and stuff. It's really cool to play with the build when mapping because you basically one-shot the packs and the explosions do all the work for you. But honestly, I feel like the bleeding needs a big care when speaking of damage over time and investment. I invested around 20 to 30 exalts on this build, and well, if you play another damage over time such as Ignite or Poison builds, you'll notice that there's a big difference on the damage that they do when you're dealing with the bosses, okay? The good news is that if you enjoy this kind of playstyle, damage over time one, this is another source or another option for you to enjoy the game by playing a physical damage over time build. Just have in mind that bleeding works a bit different than poison or ignite, because you have to constantly attack the boss until you eventually hit a very nice big bleeding hit, which will boost your bleeding damage even further. Okay, you'll see on this Conqueror fight right now what I'm talking about. I'll leave you guys on the video's description the pub of this build, and at the end of this video there will be the Sirus kill clip. Alright, so let's see how we build this character. It's a 86 Gladiator, 40 bandits, we've killed them all for 2 extra passive points. The Ascendancy, we chose Gladiator, starting with Blood in the Eyes, followed by Gratuitous Violence, because it gives plenty of increased damage with bleeding, both Ascendancies, blind the enemies, blind the bleeding enemies, sorry. And this node here is quite nice when you clear maps, because all your bleeding enemies, the bleeding enemies you're killing, will explode, dealing 10% of their life as physical damage, which increases our mapping speed by a lot. You'll see, you've seen on the clips, it's quite nice to just one-shot packs, and because they will die in sequence. Feels great when playing. Arena Challenge is quite nice because it gives us more attack and movement speed, quite nice. And Outmatch and Outlast because it gives us Frenzy Charge on kill, but also 10% more physical damage while at maximum frenzy charges. Pretty nice Ascendancy. You could play as champion if you want also, but I chose Gladiator because I believed it would do more damage. For the tree, we could go this way, get some increased damage with ailments. Also reaching this way, gain some damage with bow nodes, also some life. Then on the left, going straight up to Resolute Technique, because we don't deal any critical strike multiplier, we should aim for this node, because this way we will never miss our attacks. Our hits can't be evaded, so it feels pretty nice for the build. Okay, for the duels, it's very important, if you have the money and you want a Watcher's Eye, to have this damage over time multiplier well affected by Malevolence, increases our damage by a lot. And also for the second line, if you have the big monies, you could aim for the expire faster, damage over time expire faster, while affected by Malevolence. Pretty good also, but a very expensive duel. This node here, this duel is Intuitive Leap. You can also use this to save some points. Instead of getting all those points here and here, you could go straight and get this node here to get some more armor and defensive. Also Dirty Techniques for increased damage over time multiplier, and bleeding deals damage faster. Feels nice when playing. You can also get this one if you want, and this one to help you to max up all your res. 12% to all elemental res, and also this one if you need. Okay. Also a rare duel if you feel like you need one. You could get a resist node, resist duel with plenty of maximum life. Or if you have maxed up all your res, you can get the increased bleeding and some attack speed if you want. Okay, but this duel here is mandatory it's pretty much builds most of our damage with all these bleeding nodes here. If you see, there are plenty of physical damage with access, more damage with access, and some more bleeding and some more damage nodes with swords. But as soon as you put this Lioness Fall, all of them turn into bow nodes, which increases our damage by a lot. So this is basically mandatory for the build. Okay. Going up for the equipments, I chose a Citadel Bow because it has the highest physical attack base damage for the bows, but also I used corroded fossil and jagged fossils to craft these modifiers. Most important of them is this 60% chance for bleeding inflicted with this weapon deal 100% more damage. This is very important. You'll fire your skills until you hit this. As soon as you hit this modifier when hitting the enemy, this will boost our damage by a lot. 100% more damage is a ton of damage. So have this in mind. This modifier is very important. Get some physical damage because this is very important for the bleeding modifier as well. But also anything here afterwards, maybe some increased damage over time, bleeding deals damage faster. All of these modifiers you can get are very important, but the mandatory modifier here is the 60% for bleeding inflicted with this weapon deal 100% more damage. Have this in mind, and it's obtained by the corroded fossil from Delve. This helmet here, I chose, of course, obviously 40% increased puncture damage, but you should craft this helmet with jagged fossil and pristine fossil to get some life, and nearby enemies take increased physical damage, quite important. And then some resist if you can also. For the quiver, it's important this base broadhead because it has physical damage to bow attacks on the implicit, but also you can get physical flat, damage with bleeding, damage over time, and some more life if you can. For the rings, we could go for vulnerability on hit with some life and resists. The intelligence is very important also to have enough intelligence for your malevolence on the gear. Circle of Guilt, I chose this one because I found this ring pretty cheap on the market. I think I bought it for 1 or 2x. I think it was very, very cheap considering these two implicits. Increased damage with ailments and bleeding deals damage faster. This is amazing for the build, but also most important of them all is the Herald of Purity has reduced mana reservation and increased physical damage while affected by Herald of Purity. This is a nice ring you can also use on the build. For the amulets, I chose to get physical damage over time multiplier, physical flat, some resists, and if you can, some life. Mine doesn't have because I couldn't get with my crafts, but also I anoint this with Growth and Decay. Very nice node, increased damage over time and damage over time as well with some life regen. Quite nice for the build. The gloves has physical damage over time, some physical flat, and some life and some resist. Pretty regular. These boots here I crafted myself too. I used corroded fossil with pristine, then I did some prefixes cannot be changed, scoring, then multi-mod with some movement speed and some life. Pretty nice boots for the build. You don't actually need to craft this one, but you can get one with movement speed, life, resists, and if you can, bleeding deals damage faster, which will increase your damage. This belt is very nice, very important for the build. You don't actually need to care about the last minimum physical attack damage because you can constantly hit the enemy until you eventually hit a very nice specific hit where you can combo this line, this 100% more damage from the bow, and also the more damage from the belt. So most important here is the more maximum physical damage, attack damage, because this will influence your bleeding damage, and you can constantly attack the enemy until you get that quite important hit. Okay, very nice bleeding hit. And you can also use the catalysts to increase this maximum physical attack damage which will of course boost our damage even further. Okay, for the flasks, I got a divine one, a quartz flask for some defensive. You can also use basalt flask if you like doing it. Gives us dodge and attack, dodge to attacks and spell hits. Sulfur flasks for some increased damage, silver flask for some onslaught movement speed, attack speed, and also quicksilver for movementation. Puncture for the single target, sucked by chance to bleed, swift affliction, brutality, vicious prod, and deadly ailments. For the mapping skill, we chose rain of arrows, swift affliction, chance to bleed, brutality, vicious prod, and deadly ailments. If you don't like using rain of arrows, you can use split arrow with pierce instead of swift affliction. I chose rain of arrows to be a bit different from what we've been seeing on many streams, many YouTube videos. I think everyone is playing with split arrow. Probably is better because you don't actually need to wait until the arrows fall to the ground, but I feel like doing something, I don't know, something a bit different. Feels nice to play with rain of arrows, right? So why not? For the auras, Herald of Purity, Flesh and Stone, Enlighten, and Malevolence. So 3 auras for the build. And also Blink Arrow with Dash, Ensnaring Arrow, and Ballista Totem. This Ballista Totem with Ensnaring Arrow, it's very important to use this when you're killing bosses because it will increase the puncture's damage. Because puncture deals more increased damage or more damage if the enemy is moving. And Ensnaring Arrow, if you read this, it will right there. Ensnared enemies always count as moving. This is very important because this way, even if the boss is not moving, it will count as moving, so the puncture will do more damage. So quite important to use this on the boss. And for last of all, Blood Rage with Portal. You can also use here cast on damage taken with Steel Skin if you feel like doing it, but you shouldn't have this socket here linked. Otherwise, you'll only be able to cast your portal after taking some damage because of the cast on damage taken setup. Okay, so play here with separate links, 2 links here and 2 links here. Okay. Overall speaking, this build is fun to play. I had so much fun with leveling and mapping around because I basically one-shot packs, as you've seen on the clips. For the bosses, I don't feel like it's too good at the current state of the game. I hadn't much trouble with any bosses basically. The Metamorphs even I could kill basically quite comfortable considering the amount of life that we have. Some Metamorphs obviously insta-kill us. Some Conquerors maybe took too much time to die. Basically because I don't feel at the current state of the game the bleeding is the best, the best way to stack damage. I think GGG might consider raise bleeding damage to make it comfortable, or to not spend many exalts to have this amount of damage. Considering I spent from 20 to 30 exalts on this build, I expected to deal a lot more damage in comparison to other builds where you can spend, I don't know, 10, 15 exalts and deal maybe 5 times more damage than this one. So if you like damage over time builds, this is a cool build to play, but it's too expensive in my opinion. Too expensive because it should do more damage. Alright? So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thank you for watching and see you next time.
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die.
Watch guilty crumble.
objections, they became reliant on them. I am not so foolish. Die.
This world is doomed.
Be silent. Die.
This city is nothing.
Tá curando o Sirius. GGG, alô. Bufa, bufa bleeding. Você quer aqui o Giralexo? Ou só quer o
Is
loot?
life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain?
I have seen
Só loot, fechou.
beyond.
Die.
Watch guilty crumble.
Fazendo arabote pro Sirius Black.
Be utterly annihilated.
The edge of death, my heart races. I am alive.
This world is doomed. Be silent.
Ah,
Meaning
Is an illusion. Die. Be silent. Beyond there is only horror. Everlasting fire.
meaning
Is an illusion. Die. Be silent. Beyond there is only horror.
vai sair o pobre, velho, no capricho.
meaning
Is an illusion. Everlasting fire.
at least I felt
Deathless e nice loot. Easy game.